I want that to marinate for a minute. Live for the moment or live for eternity as you live in the moment. The problem is that none of them were successful. They all failed. But did you notice something, that the grace and mercy of God never failed, even though they failed? Now, therefore, you have a presentation that is given to us for us to, as Mama and them would say, this is going to be a teachable moment. You ain't going to never forget this lesson. Because this whipping I'm finna put on you. But the point I'm trying to get at is that in the context of our lives, all of us have, living in the moment, had to make a decision of living for that moment or live for eternity. And in the process of living in that moment, living for the moment or living for eternity, we always didn't make the right choice. We always did not live for eternity. Sometimes we decided to live just for that moment. And sometimes living for that moment has a name. No, it has a name. It's called mama or baby daddy the rest of your life, because you chose to live in the moment. You chose not to live for it. Now, there's other folks that got other names for living in the moment: cocaine, crack, heroin. But this congregation, that ain't in our belly whack. So therefore, I'm dealing with what our belly whack is, and we have undeniably lived in the moment, for the moment, and chose not to live for eternity. And said, Lord, when I get through, see me on the other side, and I hope everything will be all. And he said, it's going to be all right. So we have chosen across the board in living in the moment to live for the moment. And as we look back on it, we have our regrets. As we look back on it, we recognize our failings and fallings. As we look back on it, we also recognize the depth and the extension, the length of God's grace and mercy. You should. You should. Luck didn't get you where you are. It was nothing but the good Lord. If you think your mind got you where you are, no, it was nothing but the good. For the Lord had to open a door. The Lord had to make a way. The Lord had to let somebody else think kindly of you. And never forget, there's a Bible verse that says that he holds the hearts of men in his hand, and he turns them whichsoever way he will. So the fact that somebody even likes you is an indication of God's grace and mercy toward you. Help me, somebody. The writer, he uses three terms. He uses three terms. He uses three He used a term from last week, being destitute, afflicted, and tormented, which meant, by our comprehension, without. When you think of somebody that's destitute, tormented, and afflicted, you think they don't have anything, especially with the first term being destitute. And then the next term that is used is they wandered, which meant they had no specific destination in mind. Now Abraham is one, Moses is another. I can throw names out, but we've already been there. I'm trying to get you to comprehend it. As this collects to the end, he is trying to get you to think in a collective term that they all wandered. Moses was wandering for right after he was born because he was put in a basket and left out in the water to see what he didn't even know he was wandering. Abraham wandered because he was looking for a city. Y'all ain't heard a word I just said. He left his daddy's town and he went looking to where God was going to bless him and give him. Y'all not with me this morning. All of this speaks to the reality that the truest state of a child of God is, one, you're going to be a wanderer. Because you can never find contentment down here. Because if you are living for eternity, you sooner or later you turn your back on living for the moment. Because you recognize that living for the moment will never get you what you want. It keeps you in a habitual state of grace and mercy, which is not a bad thing, but it also keeps you with a heart full of regret because you keep seeing how you mess up and you're not giving God the glory out of your life. Wandering, then he says, deserts, mountains, and caves. When you think of deserts, you think of heat, you think of hot, thank you, no water. When you think of mountains, you think of cold, rocks, and wind. And when you think of caves, you think of dark, damp, and mysterious. It's quiet in here. And each one of those places that you think of brings about a mindset of isolation, aloneness, and dependency. Isolation because if you're in the desert, even when you're with a crowd, you feel like you're all. On a mountain, you get the impression that you might even be wedged in. Oh, well, we did do that, didn't we? Wedged in some kind of way. Just trying to, the lady there was a song out not too long ago about climbing the rough side. Well, that's the only way to climb it, because if it's a smooth side, you ain't going. And then he said caves. And I don't know too many black folks that like going into. But there was a Caucasian man who wound up going in the cave, and he got stuck some kind of way, and the only way for him to get out was to cut off his arm, because the arm was so wedged in between the crevice that he couldn't move. And either he was going to stay stuck and die, or he was going to try to free himself and live. Y'all don't get that. That was a living in the moment, where he had to make a living for the moment or a living for eternity decision, and he chose to keep on. Help me, somebody. He couldn't help himself. He was where he was, but he was going to figure out how to. Isolated, alone, and dependent. When you are living in the moment, for the moment, and you're dependent, you to take what they call that intestinal fortitude and try to overcome the situation. In the military, they have a phrase: improvise, adapt, and overcome. You try to figure out all of the events around you, look to see if there's any logistical support, and if it's not, you have to figure out what to take that's available to you, to utilize it, to win, to overcome whatever the obstacle is that you're facing, be it even if it means you're trying just to escape because the enemy's numbers are far greater than you can, or if you can figure out a way to distract them, or you can even overcome them by battle. You figure out away. But there's another statement I made there called dependent. And that's when you figure out that your efforts haven't really worked. They become futile. This week I was standing, and yesterday, and I had one of those moments. And Paul and Jerome were leaving, and I was standing out the side as they were getting in the car, and I looked at my hands. And I did this. But this ain't me. I said, this ain't, I'm in this thing, but this ain't me. You know, I told y'all last week, I told y'all about a conversation I had. Well, conversation continued this week, and the individual said to me this week, he said, trying to, I guess, embarrass me, or he said, I hope by the time I'm 60, I have my own house and it's mine and it's paid for. Because obviously you haven't done much. Everything you've done makes you dependent on yeah. You have to come to this moment where you are living in the moment, where you make the decision to live for the moment or live for. Y'all ain't. Now, for the record, I would assume every one of you in here has, in a previous moment, you have decided to make Jesus your choice. I would not try to insinuate that you haven't done that. I would like to think, since you have stuck around with Joel Anthony Ward all these years, be they one or whatever the amount is, that you have decided to make Jesus your choice. And that in the process, you have felt like he has sent me here to help you make the right choice. But there is a reason that you have to comprehend that making Jesus your choice, being dependent on divine providence, is more than making Jesus my verbal choice. When you get home, when you're alone and you get home and you calm down for the day, do you a favor. Turn off all the distractive noise and just stand there, sit there, and look at your hands and see if you can look at them as not being a part of you. Look at your feet and see if you wiggle your toes and you can see them being not a part of you. See if you can, and maybe this might be an esoteric moment, if you will, see if you can look at them as being separate. Because let the record reflect, one day they will separate. And the body that you so attached to is going to go into a morgue, and then it's going to go into a casket, then it's going to go into a cemetery that's going to go into the ground in a grave, and all of the ain't going to be. Now, divine providence speaks of provision, it speaks of protection, and it speaks of purpose. And when you look at this living in the moment, for eternity. Ask yourself the question, does living for the moment provide provision, protection, and purpose? And then when you look at it on the other side, for eternity, ask, does it provide provision, protection, and purpose? When I looked at my hands, I noticed that they did not really provide provision, protection, and they provided a means, but they did not provide. Did y'all get that? They provided a means, but they did not provide. But when I looked at them as being separate from me and recognizing that they are a part but not the whole, that I could see that God has been the one who has provided. He's the one that has provided. Y'all looking at me hard. See, let's go back to what we learned in Vacation Bible School. A couple of weeks ago, I said he got the whole world. That's provision. Y'all, Jesus loves me. That's protection. And purpose, this little light of, help me. Yeah, I'm just trying to get you to understand that in the context of your life, from when you first started coming to church, when you started going to Vacation Bible School, even the songs that you just sang because they were sweet little ditty that you paid no mind to, divine providence had purposed them in your life to help you draw closer. You didn't realize that he got the whole world in his hands was a reality of provision. You didn't, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible, you didn't recognize that his was declaration of his protection. And when you sang, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, you didn't recognize that was his purpose. I'm through. That's your sermon for today. I'm through. That's it. And that's what he gave me. That's what he gave me. Well, everybody here is a